October is unfortunately over by the time you were seeing this, or just about to be over. This is going up on Halloween. It's the day before. So we're going to talk about what I read. I'm very excited. I read 15 books this month, and I thought to celebrate, I would wear my brightly colored cardigan that I crocheted at the end of last month. I finished this up. It is very bright, or maybe September. Yeah, last month was September. I finished it up. So I thought I'd wear it because I haven't actually worn it on camera yet, and it's very bright and in the spirit of Halloween because I have not tailored my Halloween costume yet because I actually am going to a party for the first time in like 6 years since I finished my PhD. So I'm excited to go to a little costume party and have a little bit of fun. But I thought before that, let's talk about what I read. So like I said, I read 15 books. 2 of those were manga, and they were the first 2 books I read of the month. So let's talk about that. Those were 23 and 24 of Attack on Titan. Yes. I can't really tell you about them except for that these were both 5 stars for me. The way that the story is going, obsessed. My library unfortunately does not have 26 up to like 30. So I may need to buy these because I can't find them through the library. I can't find them through the other library that I have. And I can't find them through, my boyfriend has a little low tier access to a manga site, and they are not on there either. So I'm gonna have to probably buy these, but I am loving this and I want to be able to watch the show by the end of the year. So I may have to prioritize these. Maybe I'll buy them and then donate them to my library. Like I'm like, ooh, should I just buy the omnibus and then donate it to my library? Or should I see if my library can get them? So I'm gonna go talk to the ladies at the circulation desk next week and we'll see what we can do. But the twist that happened in like book 22, I was like, oh my God, like reveals. Beginning of the month, I finished Near the Bone by Christina Henry. I really liked this a lot, considering my last Christina Henry book was The House That Horror Built, and I was not a fan. I really liked Near the Bone. This was so dark though. We started off following a woman who was in an incredibly abusive relationship. She was a very young woman and you could tell something was off. And then she found a dead animal that was dead in a way that she was not expecting it to be dead. And that revealed that there was something else in the mountain with her and her very abusive husband. And that drew some cryptid hunters. And now they're all running from both the monster and the human monster. Very dark throughout the whole thing. I wanted a little bit more at the end, just a little bit, like, give me an epilogue of what happened. Like, I need to know that she was safe. I need to know some answers to things. It was so emotional though. I was so like stressed for her throughout the whole thing. That man was awful. Yeah, really recommend it though if you're okay with that type of stuff. Check the content warnings for that one because like I said, it is pretty dark. Then I read The Bewitching by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I did do a very long video about this, so I won't talk about it too much here, but I wasn't sure about, I liked this one, but there were parts of it that I was like, ooh, I don't know about that. There's a bit of grooming and like you get flashbacks of the grooming from when she was a child, and then there's like some incest stuff with an uncle. Very dark on that timeline. The whole thing is a little bit dark, but it's a 3 timeline story. So if you want to see my full opinions on it, I did really like this. I do think it's going to do well in the Goodreads Choice Awards, which I also have a video on that. But yes, I did read it and I do like it, but I also felt like ugh about it, but you're supposed to feel ugh about it. So there's that. I finally read something off my TBR, off my owned books that I have not read yet, and that was Frankenstein. I read the 1818 edition. I had never read Frankenstein before, if you can believe it, and so I finally read it this year, and I really enjoyed it, but I hated Victor. And can we talk about the fact that everyone calls him Dr. Frankenstein in pop culture, and he's a college dropout? He was not a doctor. He was like barely a student when he first started this journey for this creation. He was a child. He was like barely 18. And then it took him a couple years. He was like 20. Through like the whole end of this, like he hadn't seen his family in like 6 years. He was like 23 in like the middle of this book, like when shit starts going down. This is a young man. He is not like this old grizzled scientist. He is a young man. So pop culture is like doing some things with his scientific authority that I think could be a very long conversation. I also did a review of this where I talked about how much I hate Victor Frankenstein. And it's like a lot. And all the men in this book. They're all terrible. Then I read The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. I did talk about this one too. Not a lot of people have watched it because it's not a very popular book, but I enjoyed it, but also was very frustrated about it with it. And I do think our main characters are both very unlikable, and that makes the book kind of unlikable because the story doesn't hold up for the characters where the characters are unlikable. So there's not that balance there that you need when you have like an unlikable character. You need to have a really good plot, and I talked about that in comparison to Frankenstein because I think the plot of Frankenstein is interesting enough to keep you going even when the main character is a shit. Psychopomp and Circumstance by Eden Royce. I had this as an arc. It is out now. It came out the 21st, I think, somewhere around there. It came out a couple weeks ago. I really enjoyed this. I recommend this especially for a novella. I feel like it did a lot of really good world building. This is about a young woman whose aunt has just died, and her aunt is kind of estranged from the family for reasons that we don't get to know in the very beginning, and we have to find them out as our main character, Fee, figures them out. This world is a alternative history, like alternative world, but with our same history. We're in Reconstruction era. We're in Charleston, but they call it New Charleston, and it's like partially underwater, and we have like some mythical creatures. When her aunt dies, Fee agrees to be her pomp, which is to like organize her funeral and help guide her ghost into the afterlife. And in this world, the ghosts kind of like hang around until the pomp is done. The other thing too is if the pomp is not done correctly, if she does not pomp correctly, she could end up in jail. So there's a lot of pressure on her. She's young, she's never done this. Her mother has never let her like make her own decisions about her life or be herself. And so this is kind of her making choices for herself for the first time, and I really liked that. I love a complicated mother-daughter relationship, and this definitely had that. I want more in this world. If Eden Royce writes more novellas in this world, I will read them, please. I listened to The River Has Roots by Amal El-Mohtar. This also came out earlier this year. I finally had my hold come through. I'd been on this hold since like June or something like that. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was only like a 4-hour audiobook, and I actually think it was less than that because some of the audiobook was a preview for a short story collection, which also sounded really good. So this follows two sisters in a fairy tale world. It feels like a fairy tale. It's very much told to you in that kind of old third-person omniscient narrator style. And we have these two girls growing up together at the edge of these like sentient woods-ish, or enchanted woods. They're not quite, there's a little bit of sentience going on. Like the river has like a mind of its own. And we have this magic that's based around song. It's called grammar. And the trees are involved in it. But one of our sisters falls in love with a fae being, and somebody else is in love with her, and it turns a little tragic. And it's about sisters and the connection between sisters. And this type of thing always makes me wish that I had a good relationship with mine. I don't know if you heard that, but it happens all the time out there. I really enjoyed this. I've read a lot of really good things this month. Like, we have read a lot of really good things. I finished up the Forever Desert trilogy by Moses Osei Utomi. This is a novella series that came out, started in 2023. We have had 3 books in it so far, one every year. They all are set in the same world, but hundreds of years apart from each other. And this one really kind of wraps the story up in a very unique way. We're set in a different time from the other 2 books, and we're still in the same kind of propaganda type world where us and the main character have no idea what's really going on until the very end. And then there are still some things that are kind of questionable, like what timeline are we in? When did this happen? Who was bad? Like, I really enjoyed these. I think these are really well done, and they're a great read. They're really kind of a fascinating take on the cruelty of leadership and holding absolute power and what it means to have control over a society and propaganda. And I think it has some like dystopian elements in a fantasy world, which is a nice kind of like blend there that I really like. These are a little dark. There's a lot of death. They're kind of gory, but I do think they're very good. My favorite horror book I have read so far this month, and probably even after I finish these other ones, is Bat Eater and Other Names for Corazang. Oh my god. I was like obsessed. I was down here working on a project, and I just like I listened to like 3/4 of this book in a single night. I was obsessed. I did not want to put it down. The narrator is really good. I really appreciate the narrator. I believe it's Natalie Naudus. Yes, Natalie Naudus is the audio narrator, and I have liked a few of her narrations before, and I think that she does a really good job with this one, and I love this book. This is set during COVID, and this is about a woman who loses her sister at the beginning of the pandemic, and then she becomes a crime scene cleaner, and she starts to see this trend of these Chinese women dying in very violent ways, and she can't quite figure out what's going on or if it's important, and until she starts seeing these like hungry ghosts. And so we get some speculative stuff in with this like serial killer mystery, kind of what's happening. And it had that kind of mystery true crime podcasty type element to it, where you're going along with Cora trying to figure out what's happening. She's also trying to manage her life. She clearly has I would say it's probably supposed to be OCD based on her intrusive thoughts and her compulsions and her phobias and stuff that she has. Can't say that it's well done, but I think it rings true to the way that I have heard OCD described by people who are constantly being like, OCD is not about being clean, stop making that joke, like, and then explaining what theirs feels like. And it does feel like it's in line with that. I don't know if Kelly Lee Baker is someone who does have that or has someone in her life that does, and so I can't tell if she's writing from experience, but I feel like based on what I understand, it was a pretty accurate description of someone who deals with those types of things. She also has some trauma from the way she was raised, and that I could identify with. Her dad and her didn't really get along. She was kind of like the not favorite kid. She doesn't have a good relationship with her mom, and so we have a lot of these like family relationships. She never felt like she was like the favorite of either of her aunts, but then became the favorite when her sister died, and dealing with all of that. And it was very interesting how it balanced the two kind of religions that she experiences in her life. Aftertaste by Daria Lavelle. I hated this one. I gave it like a 2.5 or a 3 initially. And then after I did my review of it, where I went into detail on why I hated this and the mental health rep and the amount of times that suicide was mentioned in here and dealt with in a way that I felt was very disrespectful, I dropped it to a 1. I hated this book. This is my worst book of the year. And this book is fairly popular and has some pretty good reviews. I don't understand, but I hated this book. I am very upset that I read this. Probably would not have finished it if I haven't hated it so much. It wasn't even like I don't really like this. It was I deep in my core hated this. So you can watch my review if you're curious about the amount of the mental health rep in it. I gave a detailed spoiler-filled review, and I may do a little wrap-up of I may talk about it more in my worst books of the year, because it will be in there. Right after that, thankfully, I got to listen to a book that I really liked. I listened to the almost short story length, if not just very short novella, Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valente. I loved this. I didn't really know a whole lot going into it about what it was, and I feel like I don't necessarily want to say that, to say what it is, because it was like within maybe 15 minutes or so of listening to it, I was like, oh, are we doing this story? And then it was me going, oh my God, I think we are, until the reveal, where I was like, I love the twist on this. Very good in that sense. We're dealing with an unreliable narrator, only not because of like, I love an unreliable narrator, but I hate when it's like drugs and alcohol makes them unreliable. This is an unreliable narrator because she is so sheltered and kept from the world by a man that is described as very abusive, but she does not think like that he's abusive. She thinks he's perfect. And it's so good in the way it's done. It kind of feels like Stepford Wife-ish in the beginning. Eerie and very good. I followed that up with another 5-star, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Loved this. This felt so cozy, but it wasn't, I wouldn't describe it as cozy, but it felt cozy. It was kind of like a slice of life story. Like, I would watch this as like a fun little like sitcom or like space drama. Like, not a lot happened until probably, I think the first thing that actually happened was like 220 pages into the book. It was the first thing that happened. And then there was a couple other like action sequences, but most of this was just little snippets of these people's lives in space. And I loved that. It was so good. It was so satisfying to read it, and it was so soothing. And I loved picking it up. This is one of those that I probably could have spread out if I wasn't trying to like finish things on like before the end of the month. I probably would have like just sat and like enjoyed this slowly, and I would have really liked that too. But I also feel like I did read it fairly slowly. I think it took me about a week and a half to read. But it was when I did pick it up, I was reading chunks of pages because they were just so consumable in a way that was like just so soothing. Like, I loved all of these characters. They were all so great. And even the one who was kind of an asshole ended up being like a fairly good person. And like, he had like a little redemption arc, and I kind of appreciated his growth. And I am looking forward to reading the next book in the series. So let's talk about the 2 that I'm going to finish today and tomorrow. Because I want to wrap this up with my full month, but I don't want to wait to record it because I have a lot of stuff going on this weekend. So I am currently reading 2 books. I'm listening to The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. And when this one started out, I wasn't so sure that I was going to like it. I felt a little bumped around. I felt like I was in a fucking pinball machine, to be honest, for the first bit. It took me a bit to settle into the story, and I think based on reading another Caitlin Starling book, I want to read a couple more of hers and see if this is just like her writing style. But she tends to head hop in the same chapter, and I feel like maybe if I was reading this physically, it wouldn't feel as jarring, because I'm sure there are like section breaks. But listening to it on audio, we just jump, and I was like, wait, hold on, what's happening? Like, whose head are we in now? And it took me a minute to I had to really pay attention at certain times to know exactly whose head I was in and whose perspective I was getting, and that kind of made me struggle a little bit with trying to pay attention. But I'm loving the story itself. So we're following mainly 3 women, and we have a badass lady knight, we have a clever, spunky woman on a revenge plot, and we have a mad woman tinkerer / alchemist, and we're trapped in a castle where we are being starved out because our attackers are at the gates, and everyone is starving and everyone is desperate, and our mad woman, oh my god, their names are so weird, and I can't remember her name, even though I literally just starts with an F. It starts with an F. I was just listening to it earlier and I cannot remember her name. There's an F and an I and an S. I literally can't remember her name, and I'm so sorry. For some reason, her name just does not want to stick in my head. But her goal is to create food for everyone, and she's been tasked with this by the king. And then when her task starts failing, she's clarified the water though, so they have drinking water, but they don't have any food, and they're running very low. And so she gets assigned a minder, which is the king's favorite knight, Sir Voin. And Voin is very much the embodiment of duty and allegiance and righteousness. And I'm constantly reminded of the Saint of Duty in Harrow when he is in the beginning of the book, when he's trying to kill Harrow. He's it's that, where he's that aligned with the king and is very much about his task, and she is just not doing what she's supposed to be doing, and she thinks she can Voin thinks that she can kind of manipulate our mad woman into doing what she's supposed to do by just yelling at her and making her do it. And then we have Traylor, and Traylor is trying to find a way out, but also wants revenge against Voin for killing her family. And so we have Traylor, who is desperate and motivated and so smart and clever, and we're getting the backstories of these characters. And then something shows up claiming to be these saints from this religion that we also get all this exposition of this religion, this whole thing explained to us. And then these things claiming to be the saints show up, but they're not. And we're trying to escape and figure out what they're doing. And this is a cannibalism sapphic lady knight horror, and I'm kind of here for it at this point. I'm loving it. I have about 2.5 hours left in the book, so about an hour left to listen to, and I'm low-key obsessed. I'm I gotta finish this so I can go feed the dog and listen to the rest of this book, because I need to know how they get out of this and if they get out of this. The cannibalism is so fascinating in the way it's used in this book, because it's used both out of desperation and for control and for magic, and it is kind of implying all of this stuff about the sanctity of life and the value of life and the value of human beings in general, and what control means and what ownership means. And I'm actually really enjoying it from that perspective. It just took me a little bit to sink into it. So the other one that I am reading, I'm reading physically, and I also have an hour left to read this according to my Kindle. I will finish this in an hour, but it was getting late last night and I needed to put it down because it was past midnight and I had to get up for work. So Hazelthorn by C.G. Drews. So this is the second C.G. Drews book I've read. Last year I read Don't Let the Forest In, which I loved. And Hazelthorn, I'm not liking as much as Don't Let the Forest In. And I think I don't know what it is about it. Well, I do know. Okay, so I actually really don't like Evander that much. Evander is very paranoid. So let me walk it back and explain to you. So we're following these 2 boys in this gothic manor, and we have Evander who's lived there as far as he can remember his whole life, basically. He doesn't remember not living there. His parents died and he was adopted by this billionaire who owns this manor, and at the same time his best friend's parents also died, and his best friend was also adopted by the owner of the manor, who is his friend Laurie's grandfather. So the two boys grew up together, but at some point, Evander was nearly killed by Laurie. And so he's been locked away so that Laurie can't attempt to do it again, and because Evander has never properly healed from his injuries. But now, our manor guy, Byron, has died, and he's left everything to Evander, but Evander's only 17, so he has to have a guardian, which is the sister of Byron. And along with the sister comes her terrible children. And we kind of end up with Evander and Laurie teaming up to try to figure out who killed Byron and what is happening and why and how to get these people out of the manor. And it's just, it all feels very tragic and very anxious. And Evander is very, very untrusting, which is fine. I understand that. But it's the anxiety of like, he's very, very like unable to decide how he feels about Laurie, which makes sense, but being in that head is kind of not fun. Like, it's very frustrating to be in his head where I'm like, okay, can you just trust him so that we can understand what happened? Because we don't get to understand what happened until Evander trusts Laurie so that Laurie can tell us, the reader, what actually happened. And I am one of those people that really doesn't like it when an author holds back on this horrible thing that happened in the past for the plot. I feel like I'm being teased, and I don't like being teased. I just want to be told. I want to read it. I want to be shown. I don't want you to be like, oh, but that horrible day, and that horrible day gets revealed in pieces. That always kind of frustrates me. It's nothing against the way the book is written. It's just a personal thing that I don't like. So I'm just too impatient. So I'm nearly done with it. And I'm liking it a little bit better now that we're getting more information, but I'm just one of those people that I really wish that information was coming earlier in the book because it would make me feel a lot better. So that's what I read in October. My favorites of the month have definitely been Bat Eater and Other Names for Corazang. And The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet have been my top two. So I'm very excited. I managed to read 2 arcs as soon as I finish Hazelthorn. That'll be 2 arcs off of my arc list. I managed to read 2 owned books, which is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet and Frankenstein. I did not finish my TBR from Kyla. Sorry, Kyla, I did not finish The Last Unicorn, but I'm going to put it on my list for next month. I have kind of an exciting idea for, I think, how I want to do my next month's TBR. So I'm going to be thinking about that, and I'm going to get a video out of it. The dog is ready for his dinner, and it's just about time. So I'm going to go upstairs and do that, and then I'm going to work on my project, and I will see you soon with another review. He actually still has 10 minutes left till dinner time. He's just being annoying. So we're going to go feed him anyway.